Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy.
You alright, bro?
Coming back at you with some more For Honor. I am back. If you guys didn't know, I actually was on a little bit of a vacation last week, so that's why the uploads were a bit sporadic. I do apologize about that, but I am finally back, and we're going to be back to kind of more regularly scheduled content. So, be excited about that. Today, we're going to start off with something, just another, talking type video, because you guys seem to enjoy the ones that I put up, so I figured, hey, let's do some more of them. And if you didn't see, I just recently made an updated version of 3 characters that I would like to see get put into the game. You guys showed a lot of love on that. I really do appreciate it. I had made one of them way back in late 2017 or early 2018. And then I just kind of made an updated list based on, what we've already seen in the game and things that I would think would be cool. So I've also made one over 3 years ago about 3 factions that I would like to see be put into the game. Now, who knows if we even get another one put into the game? It's pretty freaking hard to say what's even gonna come on this game. Phrasing, but in general, I always say I would probably want a second title to be put out rather than constantly updating this main one, because I think for a myriad of reasons that would be a little bit of a better choice. But I know they did way back in the day say that they wanted a 10-year plan or something with the game, or if they're actually going on that, then probably adding in factions would be pretty beneficial. Just throwing that out there. So we're going to be talking about 3 factions that would be kind of cool to see in the game, at least in my opinion. All right, talk about some of the brief history, some of the weaponry and stuff, a couple character ideas thrown out there. Not going super in depth. I'm not a history fucking buff or anything either, so I'm probably not gonna. I'm doing very, very surface level explanations of things. So hopefully you'll enjoy. Again, we can make this a spot to talk about it in the comments. What would you like to see in the game? I think that at least two of these things could really actually be in the game and probably benefit it. One's a little bit more off the wall that doesn't have really any tie-ins to the game, but I just think would be kind of cool looking. And could give us some pretty cool variety in terms of things. So I'm basically just going to talk about them. Again, yeah, like I said, let me know in the comments what you think. Should there actually be more factions? That's another question. Or should they just keep adding to the existing ones? I mean, we do have 4 of them, and they kind of the line between what really falls into a certain category is a little bit vague because of certain characters being in certain factions. Like we said, the Centurion, the Gladiator, if you want to be specific, would be in an actual Roman faction, or Highlander is not really a Viking to be honest. So things of that nature. But who really knows? So with these ones, they could kind of go on the same thing. They could actually move characters around and just certain things like that. So that's what I'm going to do explaining. If you enjoy this video at all, please drop a like on it. That'd be pretty cool. We can keep talking about things like this, little speculations. I'm always always down for that. And let's just go ahead and get into the first one. Well, the first one that we're going to be actually putting in there, I kind of mentioned it already briefly, would be the Romans. I mean, I think it's probably decent for them to have their own type of faction. I mean, you would probably, if this was the case, you would take the Centurion and the Gladiator and put them in there so that they have 2 characters to begin with. And then people would be like, oh god, now they're going to add more knights into the game, things of that nature. But in general, I think that they had a pretty diverse amount of weaponry. Plus, they conquered a lot of people in the in their time as an empire. So there's a lot of influence drawn from other areas. And I think when I made my first one, the group that I actually said was the Lusitanians, which is a group that the Romans were in constant battle with, and then ended up eventually conquering from the original Iberian Peninsula. And I think Lusitania was in that modern day Portugal-ish area. So you can obviously take weapons and stuff from that. I mean, you could even throw a Spartan or something in there, just because that would be a little bit closer towards that versus the knights or whatever, who have the more traditionally I don't know, European style armor. That makes no sense because they were all European, but you guys get what I'm saying. So in with these people, I'd say the only thing that I'm slightly a little bit off-putting is a lot of the weaponry was just straight swords, and the most common ones you would see would be you would see the Gladius, obviously, was super popular. You would also see things like the Pugio, which we have in the game as a feat, and just in general whatever, the Spatha. It's just any long straight sword. You would see a lot of that stuff. But in general, I think that they kind of differ more so than a traditional, I guess, warden type knight, where you could put in some different things in there. And like I said, if you wanted to cross over and put in a Spartan, so you have a character with a shield and a spear, that would be pretty cool. But then you also have weapons like, the falcata that you can use as a different type of sword, which was used, as an adaptation from the Lusitanians. You also had things like the plumbata, which were like throwing darts, which could be a pretty cool like little feat or something focused around that could apply, bleed to characters or something. That could be a pretty interesting one to have on there as well. And just like throwing javelins were something that they were used, which you can, put those into actual feats and whatnot. You probably don't want like super ranged attacked characters in the game because, look at freaking Shinobi. That's not going off too well. And then you can even like take some of their even like weapons like the falx was like a clearing tool that was like a scythe and or sickle that was more so mainly used to like clear up like debris and brush and get that out of the way when they were like making trenches and stuff. But hey, it was a thing that they used, and I'm sure it wouldn't feel good to get hit by one, so you could even put that into the game. Obviously they have a bunch of different armors and stuff. Having the cool plumes and everything was really, really nice. And the the Lorica segmentata is like their main type of armor, which you can see in a lot of the like Centurion stuff in there, and then like lamellar versions of their armor as well, and things of that variety. But personally, I think then it could give you more option, maybe later down the line to add in more characters in the Knights, right? You take these 2 characters out of there, then you put in my boy the Musketeer with the customizable mustache, and then we're good to go. So personally, I think that seeing the like a Roman thing in here would be pretty cool. I know people talked about like Spartans as well, but the only issue I would have would maybe be like the diversity of weaponry. But at the end of the day, the game's not like true to history, so it's not necessarily like they would have to be exact on with every single thing that they put in there and keeping it historically accurate, because that's just not in the game. But I think it would be relatively interesting because the Romans, they were pretty big and they got a lot of influence from other areas, which could then open you up to some more different weaponries, armors and stuff in there to put in for the characters. So I think that would be pretty interesting. The next group of people that I would like to see in the game would be the Rajput Warriors. This is again one of the ones that I kept the same from my first video that I actually made. Essentially a Rajput, if you were, was essentially like a social status that people in India ended up having and stuff, and it took a lot of people had claims to like Rajput, but not all of them were recognized. And it was essentially like that's India's version of like a martial arts master, and they were really, really cool, had cool armors, had cool weapons. The weapons themselves are like the main thing that really, really got me enticed to looking at this character. And again, I mentioned this in my previous video that I made a while back. These guys were on Deadliest Warrior, if you guys have seen that show. Not exactly, again, the most accurate in terms of things, but they did have a battle against the Roman Centurion, and I don't remember off the top of my head who ended up actually winning. I think it was the Rajput who beat the Roman Centurion. So look at that, we already got freaking crossovers into the game. Might as well put it in there. But like I said, in general, the Rajputs were from India, and their weapons was like the main thing that I would want to put in there. So like their main weapon was the khanda, which is it's like a double-sided sword on each side, on each end. There was a blade, but it actually kind of like I don't know, was it rounded off towards the top, and it had a little bit of a point, but it was actually used more as a thrusting weapon. So it's almost like the Indian version of a rapier, and you can see the similarities in the guard on there as well. And it was used pretty much to thrust, and it was probably the most common weapon that they ended up using. So that it could be, just like a quote-unquote vanguard type character. But some of these other weapons in here would be actually sick. One of them, I don't know actually how you would implement it, would be the Arumi, which is the flexible sword. I think that would be pretty freaking insane to actually see. It's like a bendy sword. It has like flexible steel bands in it that allows you to kind of like, it's almost like a whip type sword. It wasn't the like strongest in terms of like killing blows, but it was something that you could use from a distance to kind of, chip down away at your opponent and stuff. And you would oftenly put it with like a shield. You could even use something like the doll, which you could even fashion with a spike on the end of it. If you are in close quarters, use that as well if you're not getting, the most amount of value from your Arumi. But it was super, super cool the way that you could actually use it as like a whip. People could use it as like to dodge out attacks by balancing on it. It's just kind of a cool looking weapon, and I think it's pretty unique, which would be kind of insane to see. And then I've obviously mentioned about this in the past. People talk about brawler characters, and the Katar is a really cool weapon. It's not necessarily, you're not really a brawler because you're not using fists per se, which is why I ended up going with, like the Cestus as one of the weapons that would be on the brawler. But in general, I mean, it's pretty close combat. It's just kind of like a little punchy triangular dagger. Very, very cool looking. I'm sure you could have a lot of cool designed ones, because I've seen ones that, that have like double blades on them, and just some of like the engravings and stuff, and the handles look really, really, really cool. Definitely a cool close quarter weapon. Could probably be used for like an assassin of some sort. That's really awesome. And then again, they also have the freaking chakram, which is like the throwing disc. Again, not too sure about the range in this game, because we have shown that isn't exactly the greatest. But we got like motherfucking Kung Lao up in here throwing his little hat at people. I know it's not a hat; it's a disc. But I don't know if it was really used more so in actual like combat, or if it was just simply used as a throwing weapon. It's pretty similar to that of like a shuriken, but it's much bigger than that. So I don't know if you would like I think they would keep multiple on them so they could actually throw it. So it could even be used as like a feat. Would be like, instead of throwing shurikens, you would have, or like a kunai, you would have, throw chakram type thing like that. Or instead of a bow, it could be like a tier 3 chakram. That would be pretty interesting because they look cool. But like the diverse weaponry of them was pretty nice. They also had some pretty interesting armor, and it's just something that's a little bit off the wall that we haven't really seen in this type of like game. We obviously have seen a lot of European influences in there with the knights, and then kind of like the Slavic area with the Vikings, obviously, then more so East Asia with the Wulin and the samurai. But we haven't really hit that like kind of central Western Asian part of there, with like India could really become a pretty cool area. And I don't think that they would really have too many issues coming up with cool and unique stuff for the characters that we haven't seen in the game already, instead of hey, here is just long sword number 16, which I think would be pretty interesting to see. You guys can again let me know what you think about this in the comments, and if you look them up, they are pretty interesting. I will be having pictures and stuff up of the weapons and stuff that I talk about, but I think the Rajputs would be pretty damn sick. And finally, the final faction that I would like to see be put in the game, and it's honestly one that I wanted to be put in the game for a very, very long time, and if they ever created a second game, I think it should just kind of follow this route, would be the Mercenaries. Now, this might seem like a little bit of a cop-out, but hey, I even think it ties into a bit of the lore right now. We don't really see too much struggle between the actual factions anymore. Like, yeah, again, the faction war is really no one really cares about that, but you don't see them in their lore that the developers have created them talking about the Vikings are fighting the samurai or fighting whatever. It's basically like now it's Chimera versus Porkos, and whatever character falls into that area, essentially that's how it works. But you could even have that, it's like, hey, since these two groups are fighting now, they need to bring in outside help. That's where you get the Mercenaries, and then that's where we get the freaking variety of characters, and we could actually have pretty much random crap from wherever it would be. I would, just as a little side note, put Highlander probably into this list, because, Highlander just is not a Viking. But, characters like that who really don't have like a specific tie to a group, but you could just bring in, in there to have whatever. You could literally be endless in your ideas, because it's just like a single person. You could have one of the Rajputs in there. You could have a frickin' pirate. You could have your Aztec warrior, right? You could have a Mongol. You could have literally anything that you want in a mercenary faction. I think that the game slightly hindered itself by going off of the faction process. I think that they assumed that it would be a lot bigger than it was in terms of like the faction wars, and people would care about it more, but it really tapered off after like the first 2, maybe 3 seasons of the game. And in general, if you just put in Mercenaries, it just leaves you open for a much wider variety of casts, and I think it will bring a more fresh take on there, because each one can be so different, and it's not something that you necessarily would expect. It's like, hey, at the end of the day, like I said a little bit earlier, there's only so many weapons that like each group uses, and eventually you're just going to get to, longsword number 15, or, axe number 58, or, curved sword for the samurai number 32. It's just one of those things where you're going to get, more diverse things on there. What happens when you know, next season they bring in, you know, pirate with a freaking cutlass who has a feat of a flintlock pistol, and then they bring in some Aztec warrior, and then they bring in, I don't know, fucking Shaka Zulu or something like that, and then they bring in a Mongol with like a scimitar and stuff. I mean, it would be so different, and it would be like very, very fresh to see something like that into the game. I think that this would honestly be the number one thing that I would like to see be put in the game, but who knows if we even do this. Like I said, I thought too, maybe even, I know they've already like put so much into like the, I guess, the faction stuff already, so it's might not necessarily change it, but even on the faction war, like, I think they can just eliminate it, right? The Wulin have been in the game over 2 years, and they don't have any representation on the faction war, so what's the issue of adding another one that doesn't necessarily have a thing on the faction war? You could literally just split the characters up into like Horkos and Chimera on the screen and have just do away with the factions all in general, which is what I would like to actually see if they did a second one. Just literally characters from any which part of the world, and, you know, doesn't even have to be relevant time-wise or anything. Just if they think a character's cool and they want to make it, they think it could apply to the game, put it in, boom, mercenary, good to go. So that's essentially it. I just wanted to, again, talk about this type of stuff because I think it's cool to say what, you know, what could potentially be into the game, and, you know, what I think could be good ideas. I mean, Ubisoft Fire, I mean, these ideas, they're pretty damn good, right? Especially that mercenary one, you know. Don't worry, I only charge a small fee, but yeah, so essentially, if I had 3 like choices to put in factions into the game, I would take, you know, the Romans, I would take the Rajput because they're a little bit more off the wall and more unique weaponry, and then Mercenaries because you can literally pick anyone. Bit of a cop out, but I still think it'd be really, really good. Again, have your discussion in the comments. You know, describe what one you would like to see. You can talk about what characters from that thing that you could put into the game and whatnot, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion. I'll try to reply to as many as I can. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.